Madman's back with another Warframe tutorial video. Today we're going to be talking about weapon modding, specifically primary and secondary modding. Now, if you have watched any of my previous videos, most recently we did a Warframe modding baseline. That is in the link to that is in the description below. Check that out at the end of this video if you haven't already, because let's be fair, modding is kind of a pain. So today we're going to break down the stat window and discuss some mods to look for when you first start your mastery grind. I'm gonna be honest with you, there's a lot to cover in weapon modding, and I'm probably not going to hit everything, so I'm going to go ahead and put the disclaimer out there that if I miss something when it comes to weapon modding, or if you have questions at all about any of the modding systems or systems in Warframe, drop them in the comments. Would love to hear about that. So for today's example, we're going to go to the arsenal and we're going to grab the MK1 Bratton, and I use this as a base weapon because it is one of the first weapons in the game that you get a hold of. So the MK1 Bratton, we're going to go into the upgrade screen, and you're going to see this very imposing window right here. Now, if you haven't watched the video, let me give you a quick overview of what the capacity here is. Capacity is the amount of mod slots you have, which equates to this number here in the upper right hand corner of a mod. The higher your mastery rank, the higher you can use this number right out of the gate. Now, if you're mastery rank 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever the case is, this number is going to be small. But once you hit level 30, which is the soft or the cap for any of these weapons, then you'll have 30 you can play with, and we'll talk about what to do after 30 a little bit later in the video. But for right now, you have 8 slots, a Eximus adapter slot. Don't worry about that right now, because if you are brand new, you haven't messed with Eximus adapters, and we're not going to get into that because that's a whole nother slew of stuff. So what we're going to focus on right now is the stats window, and I'm going to try to break this down the best I can. We're gonna start at the top and work our way into the damage section, because there's a lot here to kind of unpack. So this top section here, the thing that says auto, the first thing you'll notice is auto is the firing type for the weapon. So it's an automatic rifle. Accuracy, pretty explanatory, but I didn't realize quite how this worked until I read over it. This is how far the projectile will deviate from the reticle. Higher values are more accurate. So basically, if you aim, you're gonna get better accuracy, but if you're hip firing, it does get a little bit wonky, which I didn't realize quite how much that mattered until I started making this video, honestly. Ammo maximum is the amount of ammo that you can hold on your person at any one time. So the higher that is, the more ammo you can hold without running out. Ammo pickup is how much ammo you're going to pick up from the world as you're running around and grabbing stuff. Fire rate is going to be how many projectiles can be fired per second. So in this case, 7.5, so it's firing 7.5 shots per second. Your magazine size, if you're familiar with weapons at all, you know what that means. That's the size of the clip in the gun. Your noise is going to range from silent to alarming. I think there's one other one, but I know those two for sure. That is basically how loud your weapon is. Your reload is the amount of time in seconds that it takes to refill the magazine. Your ribbon disposition refers to ribbon mods, and the ribbon mods are another thing for a different day. But basically, the higher this disposition, the better chance you are at getting a good ribbon mod. So then we have the trigger, which tells you what it is. When you pull it, auto trigger weapons fire repeatedly until it is released or the magazine is empty. Semi-automatic is press, click, click kind of thing. You get all that. So that's the top window here. So now let's jump down into the damage section of this particular window, because this is the thing that tends to throw a lot of people off. So damage is divided based on a few categories, but for now, let's break this one down. There's critical chance, which is the percent that you have to hit a critical shot. So values over 100% have a chance to become orange critical hits, and over 200 have a chance to become red critical hits. So if you're over 100, 200%, that doesn't always mean you're going to get critical hits. They're more likely, but they are going to be orange and red crits, which means that they're going to be a little more deadly. Your critical multiplier is going to be the damage multiplier of the value. That damage is basically doubled for orange crits and then tripled for red crits. So basically, the critical damage is going to be, this multiplier is going to determine what that damage is. Then you have your status chance. The higher this percentage is, the higher one of these statuses at the bottom are going to be to proc. So for example, you have a 5% chance at base on this weapon of either impact, puncture, or slash, applying a status effect once it hits them. So that brings us to these three things, which are our statuses. For this particular weapon, there's impact, puncture, and slash. There are a lot more. There's electric, there's cold, there's heat, there's magnetic. Like, we're going to get into damage types in a full-fledged video at another point. But for now, let's focus on the three that are most prevalent across almost all weapons. That's impact, puncture, and slash. Impact is most effective against shields, and it also allows for a finisher at low health. Puncture is going to be effective against armor, and then it reduces the target's damage output by up to 75%. And then slash is basically bleed damage, which allows a damage over time proc once you go through. Last, we have the total, which is the combined damage for all of our effects. Now, the more that you put into the weapon, the more these values are going to change, just like they do in Warframes. But we're going to look now at some mods that I would go into and look for early on. Mods that I feel, kind of like when we did the Warframe video, mods that I feel you should have in all of your builds right out of the gate. And the first type of mod is going to be damage mods. Now, these damage mods do change based on the type of weapon, but for now, Serration is going to be one that you're going to have for rifles. Serration is going to increase your damage. You see there, it literally, it almost quadrupled my damage. I went from 18 to 47. So, it went way up just by inserting that one mod. So any kind of damage mod, and the best way to do that is go here, search damage, and it's going to bring up all the damage mods that you can use for that particular weapon. Here's critical damage. You pop that on there, which is not going to let me. Let's pop that off there. This is a rare mod, but Vital Sense, pop that on there. Critical damage is going to upgrade the multiplier. So see, now it's 2.4% critical damage. So the higher critical chance mods, stuff like that, you'll see it affected on the right. So the first thing I'd recommend is definitely your damage mods like Point Blank, Hornet Strike, Serration, stuff like that. You want to get those mods. There's also status specific mods like Flechette and drawing a blank here. Flechette, Disruptor, and Incendiary Coat, just to name a few. I do have all of those. Like here's Hellfire, that gives you 15% heat. When you throw that on there, it adds a heat value to it. For the longest time, people didn't think that it actually did anything, but it does. So when you add an extra element like Infested Clip here or Infected Clip here, you're going to be able to add another element, and then boom, it's going to add that. So adding extra elements increase your damage as well. So that's something to be on the lookout for. The more damage you do, it gives yourself a really good chance to do some damage. One other thing I would look for is multi-shot. Multi-shot is awesome. Multi-shot also affects how things kind of react and how much damage you do right out the gate. So let's take split chamber here and throw it on, and you'll see here what I'm talking about. Multi-shot is now 1.9. What happens is projectiles fired per second without consuming additional ammo. Each projectile has its own chance to apply critical hits or status effects. So the higher your multi-shot chance, the more damage you're going to do, because you're effectively firing more shots per second without expending more ammo. So multi-shot is definitely something I would recommend looking into early on as you can. The last couple of things are things you can do. One, the search function, which you've already seen me use. Press your corresponding button, and then, oops, wrong button. Press your corresponding button here. So for me, it's L3. Search whatever it is you're looking for. So for, say, damage, you'll search damage. It will bring up all the damage mods. Same with multi-shot, brings all those up. The last thing I want to touch on for this particular section is auto install. Now, if you're brand new and you don't know what auto install is going to feed in the mods that it feels is best for whatever the build is at that point. Notice it dropped in a serration and a point strike for critical chance. Now, most of the time, admittedly, they are just not good. They're like the auto install is just not my favorite. I don't like it. But for brand new people who are still struggling to understand the game, use auto install. Please use auto install, because it's going to take that load off of your brain trying to figure this game out. Use auto install if you need to. Do not feel ashamed, but the more you play, the more you'll realize auto install isn't for you. It's pretty much a guarantee. So now you got to ask yourself, what do we do once we hit 30? A few things you can do. First thing is, again, open up this actions menu. You're going to see an Orkin Catalyst. Again, I don't necessarily, I do not recommend you put an Orkin Catalyst in any MK1 weapon. I don't. Unless you just want to for cheese reasons, or you really want to play with something. Do not put an Orkin Catalyst in an MK1 weapon, because the MK1 weapons are the worst weapons in the game. That's why you can buy them with credits. And that's why they're basically just mastery rank fodder. So this will double your mod capacity. So once you hit 30, you'll be at 30 mod capacity. Putting a potato in it, as it's called in the community, will get you up to 60. These are earnable via the night waves and alerts that you can do at certain points. There are also blueprints that you get from within the game at various drops. There's definitely ways to go about getting the blueprints for these Orkin Catalysts, or reactors, as it were, with the Warframes. Should you earn a Forma, you can, in fact, polarize it by putting up a slot here. This one doesn't have any, but you can match the polarization to this particular polarization. So like this one here is Madurai, so you can put a Madurai slot in here and it will half the cost of any of these mods. Formain is something to be aware of, and you're going to see it talked about a lot in chats. But if you're brand new to the game, don't worry about it right now. We're going to do a whole video on formas and what to do with formas and how to use those to build, because that's something that I think needs its own video. So there's a lot to do. Again, there's a lot of builds and a lot of build options with various weapons. Before we close up shop for the day, I want to show you another weapon. I'm going to show you a weapon that I am actually rocking right now. It's a prime weapon, but I'm going to show you kind of what it looks like when you build one out. And it's the Cornet. It's a shotgun. You'll notice that there's more spots over here. That's because this has an alternate fire mode, which is the R3 button. That's this mode here. All of the stuff is the same, realistically, but you have to trigger it. And then you have the triggers up here. All these spots are the same. The only thing that's really different is damage per projectile, which means that in the case of a shotgun, every projectile that I shoot has these chances and this damage output. So that's why these are definitely, shotguns are nice to have up close. And as you can see, I've put some stuff on here and built it up a certain way. And as I was talking about the Forma slots, here's me having put slots in and matched up my mods to these particular slots. So that's where formatting comes in. But again, we'll do a little more deep dive on that at a later date. Weapons can build up to some bizarre combinations. They really can. It's crazy. And this is honestly just the tip of the iceberg of what you can do with weapons and with mods. I don't want to go too in depth because one, it'll overload a lot of people and I don't want to do that. And two, it's nuts because there's just so many ways to build so many different weapons. So we're going to do various builds and various weapon builds as time progresses. As I mentioned in the beginning, we did one of these with the Warframes, so check that out in the bottom below. If you like what we're doing, give me a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. It's the free way to help the channel, and we'd appreciate the patronage. I am the Madman, saying thank you guys very much for watching, and until your next journey into the void, I wish you safe passage among the enemies of the Origin system.